We are here to celebrate the Green Party candidate for Calgary Centre. Let's hear it for Kris Demeanor!
Well, good evening, everyone. You know, there are a lot of things I love about Calgary right now. This is what happens in Calgary now when you tell people we got a couple of speakers and we're going to throw a little thing together as a party rally. So thank you all very, very much for coming. This is tremendous. This is, exemplary, I think, of the incredible, unprecedented amount of enthusiasm we have created for a federal by-election this year in Calgary. And this right here is, in fact, the turning point. We were the underdogs, the unprecedented, the nobody can believe it story, and from here on out, we are the winning story. Began at a Stampede breakfast, as so much of what happens in Calgary social life does. We approached Elizabeth and said, Calgary Centre's always been a really good riding for the Greens. There's this by-election coming up. If you really concentrate, your efforts on this, we really think you can make a breakthrough there. So, once you find a candidate, let us know, and we'll do anything we can to help get that person elected. And then I walked away, and Elizabeth turned to my wife and gave a little nod and said, well, what about him? I know Calgary is ready for new voices. But we did start out where the Greens always start out, which is not even in the newspapers. The very first releases, the sort of national parliamentary bureaus, when they first said there's, the by-election's been called, literally did not mention that the Green Party was fielding candidates. So we started completely off the electoral map. We started to get a little bit of attention, and people said, hey, look, the Greens are making enough. That's fine. That's good. And the first poll came out, and it was one of those favorite flavor polls because no one had gotten a look at the candidates or what they actually had to offer for Calgary, and we were down where we normally are. And long story short, 2 weeks later, we have closed the gap from 37 points in the first poll to 9 points and rising with a bullet in the most recent poll. And we're reasonably sure we're doing even better than that because this is the same polling firm that called Alberta for the Wild Rose Party. And what that means is that for the first time in more than 40 years, Calgary is poised to elect a non-conservative to Parliament. And that would be a pretty amazing story all on its own. But in fact, what's happened is something even more extraordinary. Calgary is ready to send the second Green Party member in Canadian history to Parliament. I really feel like I began with my second book, The Geography of Hope. And when I realized, it was right around the time my first child was born, my daughter Sloane, that I didn't want to write about how bad it could get. And I didn't want to write about how much problem, how large the problem was and how intractable it might seem. I had to tell a story that was hopeful. And I really didn't know what that looked like. All I knew was there had to be a way to talk about this stuff that made people want to act. There had to be a way to build a vision of a future worth fighting for. And I really felt like I was just sort of chasing through the dark to see if I could find all the pieces of a society that could get us through the 21st century sustainably. And I was amazed and delighted to find that all that stuff's out there and it's waiting for us and we just have to go out and grab it. And there was so much of it that I actually wrote a whole second book called The Leap that dealt with all the same stuff. And there was so little attention being paid to this that I found myself being invited to speak to various groups. And it was amazing the range of groups once you start talking about not despair and decline and loss, but hope and optimism and sustainability and renewable energy and livable cities. All of a sudden, everyone wants to talk to you. I talked to Green Calgary, of course, and the Friends of Fish Creek Park, but I also talked to the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, the Calgary Real Estate Board, all kinds of people who you wouldn't think necessarily would be engaged in this conversation. And I realized I needed to do something about this beyond the writing of it, beyond the talking about it to various groups. And the first thing I did, I was on the board of a group called Sustainable Calgary, and we sat around talking a lot about how we thought we had the ideas, people knew what needed to happen. This was mostly at the civic level here in Calgary, but citizens felt cut off from their government. We had to build a platform to be able to get people engaged again, not just developers, not just interest groups with the money to lobby, but actual everyday citizens. And we had no idea what we were getting into. There was a whole range of people popped up from all different sort of groups having these conversations, and we called it Civic Camp, and we sort of threw the thing together and just said, let's get all the right people in the room and say we're moving forward and we'll figure it out as we go along. And there was a great number of people, a lot of them working on my campaign, who were in the room. One of the others who was in the room was Mayor Nenshi before he was Mayor Nenshi. And so I think we really did send a pretty strong message to City Hall about what Calgary could be. And the opportunity that faces us tonight is an extraordinary one to take that same conversation all the way to Ottawa. The opportunity we face tonight, that Calgary has everything it needs to be the great urban idea lab of the 21st century in Canada. Toronto, Montreal, some of these eastern cities, they really figured out 20th century city making. But Calgary is figuring out 21st century city making. We have the tools to really, really lead in this. What we're missing is leadership at the federal level. What we're missing is a partner in Ottawa that actually understands what cities need, that is willing to step up when we know we need more transit, we know we need rec centers, we know we need all this critical infrastructure. It can't even provide the little bit of money it's promised for some of this stuff, let alone actual vision and leadership, let alone actually realizing this is not the 19th century. The vast majority of Canadians live in cities. We need to give cities a lot more power to make the decisions that they need to make. We will only be that great urban idea lab. We will only be able to teach the whole country how to make a 21st century city if we have a government that recognizes the importance of cities. And the first thing we can do to send that message is by, in this by-election, sending someone who thinks about Calgary first and talks about Calgary first. The other great opportunity that we have right here in Calgary Centre on November 26th is to fundamentally change the conversation about Canada's energy future. Right now, we are having a staggeringly immature conversation about our energy future, the most vital conversation we need to be having about how it is we restore balance in the biosphere while taking care of our energy needs. And the way we are doing it is by shouting the phrase carbon tax back and forth at each other as if it were some kind of epithet or demon. What we actually need is a voice in the room, free to speak outside of an agenda, free to speak outside of talking points, free to speak outside of a party whip, who can say, you know what, we need to all get back to the same table. The forestry industry in BC presents us as Albertans with a fantastic model of how to move forward, because it really was in the same place about a generation ago as we are now when we talk about energy. And they only realized how to come together and figured out how to work out their common future, where government and industry and its critics were all sitting together at the table to work on common values. They really only figured that out when it suddenly occurred to them that they all lived in the same neighborhoods in Vancouver, for God's sake. Surely we have common values. Our kids go to the same schools. We're all working on the same project here. Let's get together at the table as Canadians first, put aside all of these other things, figure out where we need to go. This is the conversation we need to be having about energy. We can't have it when all we're doing is cheerleading. One of the greatest problems with a cheerleader is the cheerleader does not change the tune when it starts losing. And we have lost the conversation on energy, not just here in Canada, but abroad. Part of the reason why we are looking so bad and so many genuinely unfair things are being said about Alberta and its energy industry around the world is because we have no credible voice at that table. How do we get a credible voice? We begin by sending the second MP in Canada's history from the Green Party in Calgary Centre to Ottawa.
I don't know what's just happened. This is an intensely exciting thing and a very cool event. But, I stand here before you as the only party leader of a caucus that is 100% female. 1% of the Green Party caucus, I stand in the House of Commons frequently and say, neither I nor my entire caucus will ever heckle. And I don't know about you, but the joke is really old. I can't wait until I am no longer 100% of the Green Party caucus. For the poor, downtrodden white males of the earth, help me achieve gender parity. The constituents of Sandwich Gulf Islands took a tremendous leap of faith. They sent me to Ottawa to represent them. And what I've found is that you actually, individual members of Parliament, have a lot of rights and responsibilities and also abilities that are simply not recognized by the mainstream press. And the reason people don't see it is because the other members of Parliament who surround me are constrained. They are in chains because they work within a political party structure, whether it's Liberal or NDP or Conservative, or even Bloc, believe it or not, that tells them every single day how they're voting, what they're going to say, and what they're going to do with their time. And they don't get sent to the House of Commons very often. They call it house duty. As I said, I call it work. You just show up and you work. And it's been the most exciting thing for me to find that my basic instinct that parliamentary democracy can still work was right on the money. That if we can get in there and you do the work and you speak out. In the last year and a half, actually, when we first hit the anniversary of my election, the local newspaper, the Times Colonist, contacted my office and said, can you check and see, had I spoken in the House like ever, or how did it compare to the average MP, for example? And when we checked, and some of you may know this, but I've spoken in Parliament more than any member of Parliament by a substantial margin. Like way more than Stephen Harper even, way more than Bob Ray, way more than Tom Mulcair, because I'm there and there's a lot of work and there are a lot of bills going through. And then there's some things that are so deeply anti-democratic I can hardly believe, even in this climate, that anyone would moot the possibility of bringing into international binding laws, binding Canada for 31 years, that we should enter into an investment treaty with the People's Republic of China with no debate and no vote. And yet that's what just happened. Now, it isn't ratified yet, and I'm really hoping we can stop its ratification. But that's another topic. And that gets me to, why do I really need Kris Turner in Ottawa with me, right? I told him when I was talking him into running, David Suzuki just asked me, how did you ever get Kris Turner to run? I said, I asked him in front of his wife. It's a really good strategy, you know? But, you know, I have this very strong sense of what it's going to be like when I'm in the Speaker of the House recognizes MPs. I wasn't quite sure, how does it happen? You see it on CPAC, the Speaker says someone's name and there they are standing. What's really happening is that the House of Commons is empty most of the time between question period and when there's a vote. As soon as a speech has been made, and I do get a lot of speeches in there, but after speeches, the Speaker says, questions et commentaires, questions and comments, and I pop up out of my seat, but so do a few others, and they make their way around the room, and the Speaker calls, and I know my new name, the Honourable Member for Sandwich Gulf Islands. And that's when I get to make my question or make a comment, call people up on factual errors that they occasionally slip into because their talking points tell them to. But anyway, I know what's going to happen and how much it's going to impact Canadian democracy, how it's going to make people from coast to coast feel, okay, democracy isn't flatlining. We not only found the pulse, we got the heartbeat back, and democracy's getting up and ready to run a marathon. Because the Speaker of the House is going to call out, and Kris Turner's going to hear his new name, and it's the Honourable Member for Calgary Centre. With his vision, with his deep knowledge of what kind of place Canada can be in the 21st century, with his love of this city and his commitment to his community, and the knowledge that Calgary Centre can lead the way across Canada to something better, something more meaningful, something deeply embedded in values and the kind of democracy that built this country, that respects our institutions, respects each other, and doesn't allow the partisan spin of a bunch of backroom boys drag our democracy into the sewer. With Kris Turner with me in Ottawa, together we rescue democracy. Thank you.
There's another thing I have to make clear, because there is a lot of talk about the extraordinary opportunity we face and that we now see emerging for the first time in a very long time to defeat a Conservative candidate. And this is very, very exciting, don't get me wrong. But it is not just about defeating a Conservative. It is not just about fear of Joan Crockett winning and there being that 164th seat and someone on the backbench to keep Rob Anders awake. That's not the only reason. That is not the only reason to vote in this by-election. We can also come together, as we already have in a number of elections in this city, to say we're not just voting against something, we're voting for a whole new voice for this city. We're voting for a whole new idea of this city. But you know what, folks? We can do it. We can win. We are on track to win this thing. But we're not there yet, and that's actually, beyond the wonderful bit of entertainment you've all had this evening, why we're here tonight. I'll accept the possibility that there might still be some undecided voters out there thinking, could a green guy win in Calgary Centre? Really? No way. So here's what I want you to do. We need every single one of you to join this campaign. I don't just need your votes. I need you to volunteer. I need you to help out. I need you to start conversations and wear t-shirts and put on buttons. I need you to come down to 640 10th Avenue tomorrow and help us deliver the rest of our flyers. That's number one. You know what else you can do? Maybe that's too ambitious for you. Like us on Facebook. Retweet the stuff we put on Twitter. Tell everyone through every network you use that there is something happening here that is more than just defeating a Conservative, that there's something happening here that really matters to you and matters to Calgary. If you want, you can change your avatar online and you'll be sort of shrouded in a green halo of Turner for YYC. That would be terrific. But more than anything else, we need to change the conversation here so that we can change it in Ottawa. There's about 500 people here tonight. There's 9 days left in this campaign. If each and every one of you, one day every day for the next 9 days, talks to someone who wasn't planning to vote for us, who decides to, we will win this thing in a landslide. But you need to practice what you're going to tell these people. I'm not going to put the words in your mouth. I want you to come up with your own messages. But really, when someone says, what's with the t-shirt? What's that button? Why is that thing on your lawn? Why were you out so late last night? You need a story to tell. I'll give you my version, and then you can come up with your own. This is not a campaign about electing one MP. That's the end result. But this is a campaign about changing the face of politics in Calgary and changing the way the entire rest of the country thinks about what Calgary is going to be in the country. This is an election about fundamentally changing the conversation, beginning a grown-up conversation about the kind of country we need and the kind of balance we need to bring back to the critical conversations that we're going to have. This is an opportunity to tell the entire country, this is Calgary's moment. The national spotlight is on us as never before. Everyone's wondering what's happening here. Why so much excitement? Why is this city doing so many things that we didn't think it could do? This is a chance to join me in again making history, again demonstrating to the entire country that Calgary is ready to lead in the 21st century. It is ready to be the sustainable idea lab of the 21st century. It is ready to solve the world's energy crisis here and then export that abroad. That we are ready to take our place as the new center of gravity in Canada, and we began on November 26th by electing the second Green MP in Canadian history. I do hope you'll vote for me. Thank you so much for your time. See you at the office tomorrow.